Good morning and welcome to B Cube Sunday morning. It's a special morning where I will be playing the part of Jim Wright, notable curmudgeon and occasional ranter. Um, and since we were both in the Navy, I can pull it off. And Karen here is going to be playing the part of David Gerrold. Um, Now, you guys may know Karen from First Sunday or the Sunday Brunch, which is the first Sunday of every month. Karen's a longtime BQ Press writer and editor. She was one of the co-editors of Post Row Alternatives, uh, America Alternative Liberties, and didn't you just put out a new book too, didn't you, Karen?
Yes. And this includes many of my B Cubed press stories, as well as some that appeared in other publications, all
And
political.
and we will talk about that a little bit because it's a wonderful book. I mean, some great stories. But what we want to talk about today is how to be effective and what we can do. Because one of my fundamental philosophies here, while I put this down here, is oh, there we go. Open it so we can see the chat. And that is that putting yourself out there as a progressive, a Democrat, Democratic socialist, whatever label you want to put on it. I've been a socialist for years, or conservative Democrat, whatever you want to call it. Um, but whatever label you want to put on it, you're putting yourself out there, planting a sign in your yard, being in a march. You are saying to anybody who knows you and sees you, oh, I'm not alone. Here's this other person that believes the same things I do. And when I hear Fox News telling me that we're all just a bunch of radical left terrorists that want to destroy America, um, people don't see themselves that way. And by getting out there, you help them realize that they are not alone. I mean, and you have thoughts along this lines, I know, Karen.
Oh,
And
yeah. Well, I am seeing, you know, to some, I think a lot of us live in bubbles, particularly those of us who live in blue cities in red states, which I'm going to talk about a lot. Um, we get into a bubble where our neighbors all agree with us. And when it's really useful in this day and age to travel outside of your city or outside of your state and be somewhere where there are Trump signs everywhere. I was just in Missoula last weekend for MissCon, and Jim Wright was there. And I noticed that in Missoula, it's a university town. Everything was progressive. They had a gigantic pride parade and a huge pride celebration. And indeed, as I drove through small towns in in ah, what am I saying? Montana, I did not see any Trump signs. But when I got to Eastern Washington, those signs were up by the highway, which really, brought me back to reality. Um, I had to do a lot of thinking about. I did not wear my jacket full of left wing insignia on this trip because I don't necessarily want people. Fran Lebowitz, the comedian, used to say, if I don't want to talk to you, why would I want to talk to your t shirt? And I would actually prefer people talk to me before knowing what I believe in so they have a chance to get to know me as a person before the political stuff comes out. Um, but here in Seattle, where all my friends are very blue, I think people have really, um, they're feeling really good about they're going out and protesting. They're protesting every week. They have signs on their lawn. They're doing this, that, and the other. And I'm concerned that under this current administration, our protesting is just being laughed at by the other side. They look at us as a bunch of angry ants holding protest signs. So one of the things I wanted to bring to the show this week is all of the big subterranean progressive structures that are out there right now to provide us with inspiration, with the best way to target our energies, our donations, our blogging, everything. And it turns out there are a ton of great resources. Um, certain Substacks, certain Substacks are ranting, other Substacks, they get you energized, others are full of information. Paul Krugman, his economic analyses of Trump are really great because sometimes he talks about things that Trump's doing that may actually benefit us in the long run if we understand economy, and other things that Trump is doing that are going to destroy us in the long run. And as much fun as it is to be angry all the time, it isn't the most effective way to proceed. So, Bob, talk to us a little bit about the way you're proceeding, because you are definitely in a red town in a red part of our state.
Well, I have a. I'll go back what I said earlier. I live in one of the reddest areas in the state of Washington, and the guy behind me supports trans rights. He has a trans daughter, but he is scared to death to do it publicly. The guy across the street from me is trans, who has a roommate who is also trans, and as a tenant, a young worker from Hanford, and um, a gay person, all living there. And but I'm and then the lady right cat corner, she flies a pride flag, and so what they've done, but is they said I will not be, for the most part, I will not go out there and put a big face on what I do, or who I am, or what I believe, because I fear that somebody will come after me on it. I mean, our Democratic Central Committee, if I drove around to all of their home addresses, I would see very few political signs because they claim that or they believe that it's that somebody will come after them. Well, guess what? I put my political signs out in my front yard, and I've watched on my video cameras. I do have video camera out there. As two carloads of Republicans came down and stripped my signs. But I also know that I had enough signs by the next morning or the next noon. They were all back out again. Okay.
What kind of things? The Democratic organization sounds pretty cautious. What sorts of things are they doing publicly, or do people need to get involved with completely different groups?
Well, I believe, and that's one of the things. What am I doing? Well, I went out and opened up my checkbook and bought 100 vote blue signs, you know, and then I hauled half of them down to the state Democratic headquarters in town, because oddly enough, the state Democratic headquarters from Seattle is different than the local Democratic headquarters, and put them there because they're not near as cautious. The uh, the local Democrats seem far more afraid of offending their neighbors. I mean, they're not bad people; they're just cautious. And you know what? I'm working with them. I've kind of oozed my way in and said, okay, when we're doing things like we've got the parade, the Fourth of July parade. Yeah, we don't need to show up at the parade waving Gazan flags um, uh, and uh, making ourselves, have people looking saying, I'm sorry, but this is not where we're at. But at the same time, we got to acknowledge that we do believe that the people in Gaza are being abused. And so we have to find a way of standing out. And so what you've got to do, and this will make, I'll make it quick here, and I see you starting to, is we've got to get in and make sure that our local Democrats do not get overly cautious. And at the same time, we cannot expect them to run the same kind of organization that might work well in Seattle.
I got to tell you, in Seattle, people have pretty much walked away from the traditional Democrats. They were so bad during the past few elections. They were pathetic. Um, Tom and I wanted to get to know the folks, including some of our neighbors who are big, big advocates for Bernie Sanders. And the young tech people who were getting involved in politics were all Sanders supporters. And we thought, great, we'll go to these enormous Democratic committee and regional meetings to get to know these people and work with them. And what happened was, utterly violating Robert's Rules of Order, the traditional Democrats would not even let those people speak. And I mean, they were angry. I mean, they're there. They've come to the meeting. They're being given no roles, no responsibility, no ability to speak. Tom went up and pointed out to the Democrats that they were violating Robert's Rules of Orders, and they could care less. I don't think they knew what the rules were. With the result that when you see these very significant protests going on in Seattle right now, they have nothing to do with the Democratic Party. There are completely different political groups springing up. Um, I wanted to, I discovered that there is a website called The Blop. I am putting this into our private chat, Bob, so that you can, I'm going to try to. Um, I can't. Interesting. There we go.
There
I put it in so Bob can put it in the general chat. There is a website called theblop.org, BLOP, and you can go there and select your state, and it gives you a list of all the protests that have asked to be listed in your state. And if you want to get involved, there are tons of things going on. In Seattle, it's small communities, Vashon, Shoreline, areas where there's actually an ice facility. There are protests down there near Tacoma. And you can get involved with any of those and meet the people who are doing that organization. And I think that's pretty wonderful. These groups are doing a great job, and their leadership will eventually come together with the Democrats. But boy, the Democrats are conservative.
Many of them are, and you pointing out the Bernie Sanders thing. I know from experience that a whole lot of the Bernie Sanders uh, supporters were aggressively, would come in and accuse the just be mean spirited and ugly, and because let's face it, Bernie Sanders didn't win the nomination. But Bernie Sanders is an invaluable asset to the Democratic Party because he forces us to discuss and face things like income inequality, wealth disparity, the generational wealth aspects. You know how tired I get of having. I I tell you, I have my breakfast with my conservative buddies once a week. They the one guy that's got this perspective that says, "Well, look at all of these people who have managed to do just fine, and yet all these black folks are living in the ghettos." I'm quoting here, guys, understand? And I've spent a fair amount of effort, and I'm actually moving. I'm understanding generational wealth that was denied. I mean, even the mere accumulation, the Anglo population has been in America since roughly the 1600s, and as when the American Revolution happened, it was the richest amongst us up in the Northeast that basically pushed it the most because they really hated paying taxes. And so we have often been that we the accumulation of wealth is something that the minority hasn't had the opportunity to do. When post Civil War, when there was a level of where we were had some confiscated estates, abandoned estates, were set aside so that they could be filed for by African Americans. Well, guess what? That's a great federal law, but when the county commissioners in the counties will not enforce it, and the feds won't back that up by sending an escort, just like we sent an escort to get Ruby Bridges into school, to get these people who had fair claim to the land onto the land, and they wouldn't enforce those rules until after the expiration date on the law, and then all of a sudden everything went back to status quo, and the uh, and in leading us to the Jim Crow. So no, we have to be aware and educated, and so we can talk to those subjects without being argumentative, but being able to point out some fairly basic facts about
Yep.
this. I mean, we hear Trump talking about energy independence, drill, baby, drill. We've got to go up and despoil the Alaskan wilderness. Um, Wait a second. Who is the, I can't remember if we're first or second energy producer in the world. I, we are not having a shortage of oil. We have a shortage of refining capability, but we don't have a shortage in oil. We don't have a shortage in energy. And if we did have a shortage of energy, Trump wouldn't be trying to tear down all the damned windmills. And but
One of the huge problems is that Trump is going to be capable of generating some really short-term solutions for the United States. And the problem is they're incredibly short-term and they're out of step with the rest of the world. We all live in one world. If we're polluting the environment, it doesn't just pollute our environment, it pollutes everybody else's environment. And the the, the impact that he is going to have on the environment is terrifying if you look close at it. All of the programs that it's taken years to get into place, particularly wind power, the idea that he's out there to destroy wind power is like a baby having a tantrum and breaking everyone else's toys. It's just incredibly sad. It has amazed me the degree to which his policies have not just attacked large strategic stuff, but just small picayune things. He seems determined to destroy everything in his path.
I mean, America's been using windmills ever since forever. Wind power. How'd you get them there people over here from Europe? They sure didn't walk. They used wind powered ships. They got here and they built wind powered grist mills. They built windmills that pump the water on the farm. I mean, I grew up walking around the farm where we knew which windmill was which. We actually had. It's logical, and then all of a sudden, um, somebody decided that we should put electric pumps in there and run power that we buy from the power company. No, or this myth that the windmills are the death of all the birds. You know,
Yeah, I was down in Palm Springs last summer and got to see these enormous windmill areas, the wind farms, which is absolutely fascinating. Unfortunately, the wind farms are probably all powering Chat GPT now because the way that power is being used. So I actually want to use this to point out another site that I'd love people to look at. Let me It turns out that in almost every state, there is an alternative, and I don't mean alternative like smoking dope. I mean alternative like politics. Newspaper. Washington State has one, the Washington State Standard. Florida, where it started, because DeSantis was suppressing so much news by buying newspaper publishers, it's the Florida Phoenix. These news sites are fabulous. And I pay a little bit of money to the Washington State Standard so that I can see they cover Olympia. And they go down there and give you so much better coverage on what's going on what the Democrats want to spend, on why the Republicans don't want them to spend it. Sometimes it's a budget issue, which is important, and sometimes it's an ideological issue, which makes you want to rip your hair out by the handfuls. But with Washington State and other progressive states facing enormous, enormous shortfalls because they're having their budgets ripped apart by Musk's friends, it is really important to look at what's going on at the state legislative level. In Florida, surprisingly, there are a couple of progressive groups that have managed to stop a lot of the book banning and the school curriculum rewriting. They've been incredibly effective at recruiting parents at the town level to go in and fight with these packed school boards full of DeSantis supporters. Anyway, it's really great if you find out who is running, who from the statenewsroom.com is running your state's news site, and go find out what's going on. You will be in shock at how different it is from what you're seeing in your newspaper every morning.
That is good. And that is also another brilliant point to be made is school boards, city council meetings. You know, when I was a stringer for the newspaper, I used to go to all the city council meetings, all the school board meetings, and I can tell you what, nothing will make your teeth go numb faster than sitting through 2 hours of meeting trying to find that nugget of information, especially when, depending on who administers the board meetings, as a press member, you will sometimes be courteously given a packet so you can follow along, or other times you're like, well, you're here, but we don't have to cooperate. But go to the school board meetings, read them, get in there, get on the agenda. If you see that there's something coming in on the agenda, the way people like to think that, well, it's America. I got freedom of speech. I can go to this public meeting and they have to let me talk. Actually, no. If it's on the agenda, you can speak to it. If it's not, then you get to sit through the entire meeting to the point that everybody's tired. Most of the people have gotten home, and then try and get yourself squeezed into public comments. And by then, the meeting's over, the votes are taken, the die is cast. So go to your meetings. I'd say write letters to the editor, but there ain't very many of them done anymore. But occasionally, I notice that you know they do get out and they get written, and they do get published sometimes online.
Bob, since I'm being Jim Wright today, I want to rant and rave and tell a couple of stories. I was in different trenches from Jim, but still trenches, and I was a reporter like you. I'm going to tell two stories. The first story was about the school board, which I covered. Actually, I think they're both about the school board. And I would go to those meetings just like you and sit through them, and they'd have a little bit of discussion. And the minority group would say one thing, and the majority group would listen politely and then vote the other way. And this would go on all evening. And one night at the end of one of these meetings, I followed the chair of the school board's car, and she went to the local pizza place. And with her briefcase under her arm, she scurried into a back room, followed by the rest of the majority members of the school board. And they went back there and they had the real school board meeting literally in the back room of a pizza place. So I knew the owner of the pizza place and I said, "Would you let me deliver the pizzas to their table?" And he said, "Sure." And the door opened and I ran in with two pizzas, and you never saw a bunch of people lose it faster. They could not believe I had caught them. And it is illegal for the majority of a board to have a private secret meeting. And I caught them, and it was in the newspaper. The second story I want to tell has a slightly different ring to it. The second story is about data. I was covering a small town, and it was during a point where people were having fewer children, And we had schools all over town. And this was in New England, but the schools were California style, so the heating was terrible. It was costing them a fortune to heat these schools, and there weren't enough kids to justify all these buildings. So, of course, they went through the we're going to close schools, and all the parents showed up because they wanted to close the school on the other side of town, not the one near their house. Well, in the middle of all of this, my very wise editor said to me, I want you to look into this because they were doing it because the birth rate had dropped. So I went to the local hospital and I looked at the birth rate for the past 10 years in the town. And you know what? It hadn't dropped that much. And yet they were claiming there were 15% fewer kids at the schools when the birth rate had only dropped by 5%. So the question, Bob, is where were those kids going? And this drove me to talk to Sister Mary Louise, the principal of the local Catholic school, which had a 2-year waiting list of parents begging to get their non Catholic kids into a better school system. And I can tell you that when that story broke, my editor's phone almost fell off the desk from ringing. But the reason I tell this story is about data. We're being given a lot of data, and it's in little tiny news bites. It's terrible. And their point that the birth rate had dropped was true. That was correct data. But the lie was how much. So I want to give people a website to go to if they want to see more really good statistical background. And, don't have a fit because sometimes these statistics bear out the Republicans' perceptions and sentiments. What they don't usually bear out is the Republicans' solutions for the problem. But Trump's crew often does, and this is why they're so successful, target the pain points. It's their analysis and their solutions that are off. So I've put into the chat, Bob's put into the chat, pewresearch.org. Their research is excellent. And it really does get to the statistics behind a lot of things, including who votes how in the elections. Because there are various rumors about computers and elections being rigged. There's that on both sides. But Pew is looking at actual voters, not right when they walk out of the poll, but in the long term and how they behave. And also tons of other things about kids and media and where we get our ideas. So if you want to get righteously indignant, in addition to watching this show, go read some of the new reports out at pew.org. Bob?
Yeah, I will tell you what. You go read some of these statistics. For example, you might want to know why if anybody who knows the difference between a progressive and a regressive tax is one of the reasons why Trump and his ilk want to shift the government funding from income tax to tariffs. Tariffs are a regressive tax. Tariffs are just essentially a sales tax on the people who buy the product. Okay. And so if you don't want to buy a Toyota, you don't, okay, I guess you won't pay the tariff for a Toyota. Okay. So that means the tax is there on the end user. Just like if I don't want to go buy a washer and I want to do it in a bucket on my backyard and hang it on the clothesline, great, I do that. Okay. But once you get into this, you realize that the progressive taxes, when you have a sales tax, what percentage of the income of your income is spent paying taxes? Well, if you are making $20,000 a year trying to raise a kid, you are spending a huge amount of your money in a state with a 8% sales tax paying taxes. Now, if you're making $500,000 a year, you're not spending a very big percentage of your money on sales tax because there is no sales tax on leasing your mansion. There's no sales tax on the power you use. There's no sales tax on the lawyers and the accountants that you use to protect your wealth. And so you're paying a minuscule amount of your money on this. And so therefore, you're getting it's a regressive tax. It's focused and shifts the burden to the poor. But a progressive tax system will make it so that you pay what I would call a fair share. Because I think I don't remember who it was that said it, but it was one of the billionaires that says, when my secretary or my admin is paying a higher tax rate than I'm paying, and I'm making $1 billion a year, there's something wrong with that system. And if you're doing $1 billion a year in income, oh my God, I'm having to pay $100 million a year in taxes. My response, so um, you're getting the other 900 million to go play on your yacht, and that gets back to the why. This all drives back to the bad old days when you said you had a 90% tax rate. Well, that 90% tax rate was to encourage reinvestment in your business. The allowed the government and the people, because remember, we are the government. We the people are the government, to drive investment that was good for the country. And if you don't want to invest in the country with the money you're making off of the people in the country, then fine. You don't pay your taxes. Pay it in tax.
I have an observation from living in Seattle, where a lot of people have a lot of money. Um, and it's a bizarre realization. A lot of wealthy people in Seattle whose salaries are, they work for Amazon and they're making $500,000 a year, a lot of them are willing to pay more taxes. They're willing to have an income tax. Seattle has had various attempts, which have failed at the courts generally, to have people making over $1 million a year pay a tax. And many people making at that level are willing to pay the tax. The people who don't want this are the Jeff Bezoses, the people with the billions and billions of dollars. For some reason, they don't want to pay a penny on anything. Well, why would they? I mean, someone making $1 million a year and living here in Seattle would like the state of Washington to have some money to fix the roads, to help homeless people get housing. But Bezos, who probably lives in Spain half the year or something, or has a private enclave in Florida, he doesn't care. And the problem is not that some people are making a good chunk of money, it's that some people are making such obscene levels of money, and they are the ones who don't want to support the states or the countries or the cities or the rest of the population. And this just makes me ill. Um, Many wealthy people in Seattle are donating very generously to charities, but the charities, if you've ever worked in a nonprofit, they often don't run in the most efficient way because they don't have any cushion. And now, in the current economy where all the grants are being pulled, they don't even know if they have any staff. It, the billionaires, even more than Trump, are responsible for the terrible situation we're going to be in the next couple of years. And it's
Yeah.
I am clicking, Bob. I'm putting a link into our chat so you can put it in the full chat. Um, I've suggested following Paul Krugman on Substack, but I'm also suggesting getting the recent books by Cory Doctorow. He's written 3 just delightful, essentially thrillers that will provide enormous insight into how cryptocurrency works, the mindset and the lifestyle of the extreme wealthy. And I don't mean just Botox. These are excellent, excellent books. And you'll be entertained as well as horrified.
Yeah. I mean, you were just talking about the wealth. The wealthy don't care. There's a wealthy enclave down in Florida um, that recently, where the president's daughter lives, and they lived this when they built this. It was kind of off. All the rich people said, "Wow, this is really great. Let's move in here." Well, now after time, they found out that those septic systems that they had aren't working real well.
That's
And then
Florida.
it came in and they said, wow, it's going to cost $10 million to connect to the city septic. And the city said, well, we're willing if you're willing to pay. And guess what? A vacant lot on this enclave sold for $110 million, to give you an idea of the value of the property. But at the same time, they didn't believe that they could come up with the 10 million total that it would cost to connect them to the septic. And so, being that almost everybody there is a billionaire, they got it into law that the city had to foot the bill to bring them in. That's wealth. That's power. That's how you. That's what's wrong. They didn't care that they're raising the taxes of the waitress who's working down at the dining go. They just know that they didn't have to fork out a six-figure check, which, if you broke it down amongst them, they might have all been paying almost $500,000. Whoop-de shit.
Yeah.
Now, I got something here that I put up that says, we often talk. We're saying, what is how do we get out there and get our message out? And what's really bad is, I've noticed, if you'll notice, an example was, I was reading something somebody wrote about um, uh, national parks and federal lands, and they presented two approaches. Well, should we preserve these lands so that the animals and the families have access to them, or should we manage them in a manner that meets the needs of American people for roads and housing? And well, gee, meet the needs of the American people, housing, roads. Who's not to like that? Well, they didn't say, well, what we mean is housing for the mining community that I'm bringing in to exploit and commercially develop this land, at the same time as turning over Yosemite to the real estate developers. There is a way they will word that we have to be aware of. And then, so here's something I think we should be aware of. If we ask ourselves, what is the perspective that we can use to as talking points? Okay. Now, where did it go? I just pasted it.
You posted it. It's up. Everyone gets a fair shot.
Yeah. Oh, I know it. It disappeared on my end.
But it went there.
Oh, I know it's somewhere in private chat, but I
I
just
see it in
posted
the
it in.
public chat too.
Ah, okay. Well, anyway, everybody gets a fair shot. That's not saying that, everybody gets to be a millionaire. Everybody does his or her fair share. That's a oft missing point in our from our progressive perspective. Uh, we have obligations as citizens, not just rights as citizens. Rights and obligation go together. Okay, we do our fair share if we want to get our fair share, and everybody plays by the same rules. That means, if that waitress lived a mile out of town and she wanted to connect to the city sewer, and they said it's going to cost $200,000 to do it, does she have access to a legislator to go change the law so she doesn't have to? No. Everybody plays by the same rules is a fundamental. It's that we should demand in our country.
Bob, I think that the everybody plays by the same rules has become less and less honored in the past 8 years. I really, really see it in Seattle. We have a bizarre thing going on right now where three very wealthy families in multi-million-dollar mansions just outside Seattle decided their view of the lake wasn't good enough. And one of them hired a contractor. And not only did he cut down all the trees on their property, the contractor went in and cut down 100 trees on public lands that are there to prevent erosion so the hill doesn't fall onto the highway. And a neighbor who is not a multi-million-dollar guy who lives down thing saw on his webcam for animals trees flying down this hillside. So he went and investigated and he called in the city authorities. It has been weeks, months, and the city authorities said, we can't get the wealthy person who we won't identify. We can't get them to tell us what contractor they hired, so we're stuck.
No,
Can
they're
you
not
imagine
stuck.
if the police came to your house and said, your contractor just cut the sewer line, tell us the name of who it is, that you would get away with not telling them who your contractor was? And
Yeah.
yet, these people, oh, and one of the three multi-million-dollar homeowners is running for city council.
Yeah, I won't even get into the fact that up over here where I live, oh hell, I'll get into it. Uh, we are one of the few cities that don't have districts for our city councilmen. So almost all of them live up in a very nice part of town, and it seems like they're almost all in real estate, and it seems like they almost all are able to get the waivers they need to do whatever they need to get done, while the rest of us um, kind of, well, your shed is 2 feet too close to the road. You know, you need a, it's just the privilege of
Uh,
wealth.
it's also the fact that from the time when I was a journalist in 1980, that'll date me, um, the ranks of local journalism, the papers are gone. The ones that remain are just using wire service copy. There are very few local journalists. And the way things used to work, the cities didn't do these things because there was a reporter running around town hall asking annoying questions. And recently, uh, the columnist for the Seattle Times, Danny Westneat, really good columnist, did a story about a town, a commuter town outside Seattle, where parkland left to the city by a family in a will to be used as a public park suddenly had become a housing development. And someone looked into it, and indeed, the agreement, the bequest was this was going to be public lands for use as a park in perpetuity. But now it had houses on it. And Westneat wrote a story about this. And I wrote to him and said, Danny, when the city council approved letting them build houses on this property, did you look to see how many of the city council members were invested in the real estate company that was building the houses? And Westneat's reply to me was, "Oh yeah, I'm sure they all were." And he said, "But we don't have any bandwidth to do that kind of reporting."
That is sad but true. Going
And
back to the comment that
yes,
this is, and everybody plays by the same rules. There's a caveat that's in place in America today that says everybody plays by the same rules commensurate with their wealth and status. Okay. So if you have more wealth and more status, your rules are different. The rules, but that's just
I think it's going to be real interesting to see what happens to Elon Musk because one thing that this country loves is a good shit show. And I think that if Musk runs into serious trouble with his board of directors around Tesla and loses a lot of status, I think you're going to see the system go after him because they love to take people down.
oh, well that's what Donald Trump's greatest evil is. Oh, allow me to destroy you. I mean, he just comes out and publicly says it. You oppose me, I will destroy you. I mean, Elon Musk says your big beautiful bill is a pile of crap. Oh, next thing you know, you got Trump's bully boys, his flying monkeys. No offense, Jim, are out there saying Elon Musk should be deported because he's an illegal immigrant. Well, yeah, I'm quite sure that Elon Musk's immigration status was manipulated.
And
But you
now
know
we
what?
should enforce the law that we haven't enforced for years.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
let's use it, and or you oppose me on this legislation to destroy the basics of America. I'm going to have you primaried, and because of the violations of the emollients clause in the Constitution, Trump now has the resources to destroy virtually any politician he goes after.
Speaking of politicians, I want to jump in on the New York primary. Um, I was just in New York, and if you go to New York and spend some time, on the street, in the restaurants, in the shops, it will not surprise you the results of that primary. The New Yorkers they've always hated Trump. He built the Trump Tower and blocked Walter Cronkite's condominium view. I mean, he's torn up Manhattan before he moved on to more vulnerable cities, but they hate him. And it is not surprising to me that they have in the primary come up with an extremely progressive politician. But now watching people pile on this guy as if because he is of Middle Eastern descent, they're acting like the Ayatollah Khomeini is running for mayor. And it's really disgusting. And Democrats are some of the worst people attacking him.
Well, it. I mean, he won 46% of the vote, if I believe, in the Democratic primary, and knocking out Cuomo by who had only 34. So now Cuomo's running as an independent. You've got that crooked son of a bitch that is mayor that sold his soul to Trump. At, you know, is running as an independent, and then you got Manani. That's right. How do you pronounce it? Right, Manani. Yeah, um, running as a Democrat, and God knows who's running as a Republican. This is going to be one of the most. And I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see them force a primary and the people claiming the independent status to see which one of them goes on the ballot.
It's going to be amazing. And New York is really mad at Trump. I think their current mayor is going to go down hard. Because they thought they were going to get Trump in court, and he pretty much made sure they didn't.
It's crazy. But I tell you what, New York just did show us one of this. This is one of the largest uses of ranked choice voting. I know Alaska uses it, and I tell you what, ranked choice voting has a tendency to keep the true radicals at home.
Really?
No, I mean, and not in terms of voting. They'll show up and vote, but the outcome of the election is going to be somebody with a broader appeal to the electorate than just the guy who can scream loud enough to get the conservative MAGA hat people lined up for him. And that I think is good because uh, same thing works on it. I don't want my Democratic candidate to be a one issue ultra left person. I want them to represent my most of my views. You know, nobody has to represent them all. I can't remember what president said it that says, oh, wait, no, it's an old mayor, Mayor Koch said this. It says, you know, I want I want to represent the people who think I'm right on 9 out of 12, 10 out of 12. You know, if you agree with me on 12 out of 12, you're freaking crazy.
Ed Koch. Okay, I've met Ed Koch. He was truly amazing, and he was an amazing politician for New York. He understood New York. He spoke their language. He was kind of awesome. And I would also say that he's somebody who made, at least early in his career, a fair amount of personal sacrifice to be mayor of New York, and he did a good job. But New York, the New York mayoralty is always an interesting um, litmus test about America in a lot of ways. Um, it's fascinating and it's really fun to watch. And if Mamdani is someone in the chat suggested, Emily Johnston said that he is not, that an article claims he is not what he is trying to sell himself as. If indeed that is true, I have total faith in the New York news media, which is one of the few really decent news medias left, to find out what he really is. And that may blow things up even further.
Oh, here, I'm posting this quote from Mayor Koch. I got it wrong.
And see a psychiatrist. In New York, everyone sees a psychiatrist anyway. I love New York, but yeah. And as you can probably tell, I've lived there.
I've never been with New York, but I've heard that it's an American version of London. Vibrant, rich, multicultural, and I tell you what, I love London.
What I loved about New York, when I lived there in the 80s, it was actually dangerous. The streets were dangerous. And I was just there recently, and I walked by myself from Hell's Kitchen to the Upper West Side alone at 10 at night. And the only issue I had was that people kept stopping and wanting to have conversations, which was great. Yeah, awesome place. And that sort of brings us back to the whole issue of blue cities. There are some incredibly vibrant. I was amazed at how vibrant and youth oriented and progressive Missoula was. And my friends who live in Louisville, friends who live in Atlanta, are talking about just a real heartbeat of progressive politics there. And boy, I have to wonder. Tom and I were considering moving to one of these cities, moving out of Washington. And I have to wonder what it's like to be in a really blue city when the state legislature is outlawing abortion. It can't be good. I don't know how you can be blue with that much repression going on in the state that surrounds you.
It gets down to gerrymandering and the way the districts are set up in the state. I mean, we've all seen those beautiful maps that they say, see, look at all these areas that voted red, and then here's these areas that voted blue, and there's tiny little dots of blue scattered over there. And all you want to say to them is what often the caption says: land doesn't vote. Empty land doesn't vote. It's land with people on it votes. And that's what we got to remember. Um, we need to take care of our people in this country, and our people need to take care of our country. Uh, because this idea that I fear for our next president, because let's face it, if there is another presidential election, it will be won by a Democrat. If the House will be controlled by Democrats, and the Senate will likely be controlled and by that time by Democrats. And guess what? Trump will have broken the country. He's already broken so much stuff that to get past all of his executive orders and all of his BS, to undo his tax cuts, is going to be virtually impossible because nobody will go vote for a tax raise. And when you kill a tax cut, you know, um, and when you want to remove, he's removing the fees put in by ATF for owning silencers for your guns. So now the gun lobby is suddenly going to be back in a for there. It's going to be impossible to undo so much of what Trump did, And suddenly, as we start to do this, oh my God, the current president is adding $4.3 trillion to the national debt, make by shifting all of this funding for social safety nets into his badged goons, uh, chasing down people who, I'll just say brown people for the most part, and deporting them under the guise of making our streets safer, when only 6% of the people in ICE custody have ever been convicted of a crime, if I believe the numbers right. Uh, and I could be wrong, but let's say it's 60%. Let's just be bold. That means that 40% of the people you're picking up and deporting are just standard working people trying to hold a job, may have come to the country. I mean, I read this one where the kid was in the kindergarten class and they picked him up at graduation.
Yeah.
What a criminal. I would say fundamentally, um, do I believe we need to have open borders? Hell no. But do I believe that we've got people that have been here working hard, own a business? We just had a business owner in Pasco got deported. Um, if you're working and paying taxes, I think that you should go to the very bottom of the list for people who are even bothered to be looked at.
And
And we
Bob,
need the laws in place to protect these people.
Bob, you are your comment about brown people is really valid. All my grandparents are foreign, and I grew up as the granddaughter of immigrants. And there was very, very much an emphasis on we can pass and look just like people who have been here since the Mayflower. And you pass by speaking differently. You pass by anglicizing your last name. You pass by not wearing any jewelry that indicates what your religion is. And we did it. I mean, my mother passed by marrying somebody, who had an American last name. Um, that is not an option if your skin is brown. And it makes me crazy when you take somebody who's fourth generation Asian or African, and it's like they must be following directions from the Communist Party because they're Asian. And it's so depressing that skin color gets equated with politics. It's bizarre, and it's the absolute essence of blatant constitutional, well, governmental racism, that people assume that people are dangerous because they might look like they're from the Middle East.
It's crazy. I mean, I just posted something here because they had asked. Alan Shapiro had asked a question, so
He's
I went.
talking about how few of the immigrants have any sort of criminal record whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there's a difference between a criminal record and a chemical, being accused. But I'm going with the premise that innocent until proven guilty, and I'm also going with the premise that looking at that, some jurisdictions allow for non-federal positions. They allow non-citizens to vote. Now,
Yeah.
oh my God, until you ask yourself, do we believe in the concept of that person is driving on our streets, working in our offices as a building, paying taxes? Oh, wait a second. So you're saying that you want to have taxation without representation? The people that they refer to as illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants pay estimate is $100 billion a year is the low end of the estimate for the amount of taxes these people pay. Now that's enough to pay 1/7 of Trump's tax cuts for his billionaire buddies, you know. But I mean, it just, we're we want the labor, the cheap labor.
Oh,
We
yes.
want the
And there
profit.
And the governors are now of the agricultural states are now begging Trump to let their undocumented folks stay and pick all the cotton and the grapes.
Yeah, we've just got to get over the fact that we can't. I mean, I can say lots of things that'll appeal to the right wingers that says, you came to this country illegally and we got to get you out of here because our country needs to be safe. And if you want to come be in our country, you go get $5 million and buy one of Trump's special gift cards for citizenship. Oh, wait, that last part they don't believe in. That's just I mean, it's crazy, that there is no path to citizenship that is available for most of these folks in
Not
reality.
anymore.
Not anymore. And I can sympathize with the folks that says, hey, we may have been a little liberal with chain migration. Uh, where my cousin's in America, I get to be a citizen. Well, okay. But you can't do what we're doing now, which is we walk into a home, grab daddy, grab mama, and then tell the 10-year-old, well, sorry, you're going to either go with them or what, you know? We're or the one guy who had three Marine sons who served this country, and they beat him up in the street. And I mean, half a dozen fat ass goons beat him up, a little tiny man, and it just was disgusting to watch. These people are violent thugs that they're empowering through ICE to do evil things in the name of me and you. It is. Oh, and by the way, are we now angry enough for you guys to qualify as David and Jim? Sorry, but this shit just pisses me off.
Yeah, I know. Bob, we need to wrap it up.
Well, I would rather wrap up for a second by you telling me about. Give me a few more details about that new book you got out,
Okay.
because it is a good book. It's called Patty 209, and
Well,
there it.
this is stories of individual resistance. And I started writing them 8 years ago, and Bob published many of them. And when I wrote them, I thought they were sort of dark projections into what might happen if political stuff like this went on. And unfortunately, not only did these stories turn out to still be completely valid 8 years later, but many of the horrific, unbelievable outcomes. I had one editor reject the story Patty 209 because he said, this is just a dystopian hallucination. It's coming. It has come true. Um, at any rate, these are stories about individuals. My personal favorite is about the woman whose grandson brings together the Republicans and the Democrats with the Age Equity Act, which is going to fund stuff for the left, stuff for the right, stuff that will make everyone happy. And the way they're getting this money is that when people are 80 years old, they have to report to be euthanized. And it's a story about this politician's grandmother who has to report to be euthanized. This is not a depressing story. She gets her revenge, but this is the type of thing that is in the book. And in addition to hoping that you will get a look at this book, I'm hoping that if you do, that you will review this book and other B Cubed Press books. And to that end, I have a blog post called "How and Why to Review a Book." Bob, could you put that into the chat?
Oh, I could. Uh,
Yes, and
oh,
because B Cubed Press and me, we all love reviews, and reviews are what really make or break a book on Amazon. It turns out, I'm doing a lot of my books in Seattle area bookstores. It really makes and breaks it at the bookstore because they will look at Amazon to see if you're getting reviews. And the story of my first review, which was by a TERF who took offense at my trans story, that will have to wait for another B Cubed Press Sunday.
and tell you what, Karen, and you're always welcome. I have the 14th open. but I got a sneaking suspicion
I have a
was that a
cat.
cat? Yeah.
It's a
But
cat.
I tell you what, also, Karen's going to be back with us next week with along with Irene Radford and Brenda
Brenda
Clough.
Clough.
They have a wonderful chemistry, but they've got Laura. I know her as Laura
Laura
Turtle.
Turtledove.
What's her? But
Laura Turtledove.
oh, I know that part, but
Yeah.
her email had a different name on it. But Laura Turtledove, and it will provide a wonderful talk because these guys they do interact with their guests so well. And then on the week following that, it's going to be I'm going to come back and be finding me another guest like Karen, whom I can channel the rage through. Uh, but thank you so much, Karen, for
Thank
coming,
you.
and
It's
thank
always a
you
pleasure.
folks for watching. And that said, um, well, okay, who made the wise ass mark about? And then Bob. Oh, by the way, Gordon Linzer, the last comment there is appearing in Scott's Planet, which for many of you have thought would never happen. I was beginning to worry about it, and the uh, but we're getting that one out, and then we can start work on two other anthologies that are because we're going to after Worldcon. We're going to talk about it a bit at Worldcon, but right after Worldcon, we're going to reopen um, for Alternative Liberties 2. That is, we don't have a title. That's just a working title. And I've told people, to be blunt, I'm tired of being Mr. Nice Guy where Trump is concerned. And the Republican attacks on what is America and the destruction of America at the hands of the. I mean, for God's sake, people, who would put the morning anchor for Fox News on as a Secretary of Defense and put the lady running the World Wrestling something or the other as Education Secretary, or a woman most famous for shooting her dog and her goat in a gravel pit as the Homeland Security people? Barbie, Ice Barbie, come on. We have a country to run here. We are not a reality TV show with the that says, how bizarre can we get? Tune in tomorrow, you know. Um, so that's it. Tune in next week, and I will see you guys later. Bye bye.